Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is the dark side of the moon. And I was writing about a number of things, but I have been getting migraines my whole life. So I was writing about that at the front end of my essay and talking about that. So for any of you who maybe also struggle with migraines, it's definitely not a new journey, but it's one that I had pretty well under control for a very long time. I was very successfully dealing with migraines with rizatriptan for years. And then I hit perimenopause, and sort of all the things that I had been doing just weren't really working very well anymore, particularly over the last year. So I ended up I had a whole bunch of things. I had my hormones checked. I had a whole bunch of things done. And about 6 months ago, I went on Topamax, which is a daily. I'd always kind of hesitated to take a daily medication because I can go for weeks and not get a migraine, and then I might get a cluster. So I didn't like the idea of having to take something every day. But it was getting to the point where with perimenopause, you don't have really a cycle you can count on anymore in case you haven't hit that yet. So I still get a cycle. I'm going to talk very openly about this because we don't talk about this stuff enough, especially, for women who go through this, there's just not enough. It's starting to change, but there just isn't enough open conversation about what happens. So, I still get a cycle. My mom got her period till she was 62 years old. So there are all these, sometimes people are like, oh, well, nobody gets their period after this age. Don't just forget that. There's no formula for this stuff. So that was my mom. I don't know what's going to happen with me. But that's just how it is. So what happens at this point is you don't know you don't know if you're getting it or you're not getting it or what's going to happen. The hormones go all over the place. And I think it's the same for men. Men have hormonal shifts as they go through their lives as well. But there's just not a lot of conversation or information about that. For me, with migraines, they would come with my cycle. That's what started to happen over the last several years. And now that I don't really have a cycle I can count on, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with the migraine. So that's what was happening for me over the last few years, and also went through a lot of loss, as I've written about and talked about. I lost my mom at the end of 2021 and my dad in 23, and it's been a lot of upheaval and grief, and then there's everything that's happening in our country. There's just, there's a lot. My firstborn went to college, so a lot of ground shifting underneath me, in addition to whatever is happening hormonally. So I went to talk to the doctor. The first doctor I went to was a man, and I went and spoke to him. And it's not to say there are lovely male doctors out there. And one of them, I'm a close friend with a general practitioner who's a man, lovely human being, could not be more empathetic. So I'm not drawing, I'm not painting every male doctor with the same brush here. I'm just sharing this experience with you. But I went and spoke to my GP at the time, and this is going back a couple of years. And I told him, I was like, hey, could we just do a blood test so I can kind of see what's happening with my hormones? I don't know if I'm in perimenopause. I don't know. I think I am, but I also don't know if the sadness that I'm feeling is grief I'm feeling intense. I cry every day. Like, I just want to understand how much of this is grief, how much of it is hormones, or I don't even need to know how much. I'm trying to understand if what I am feeling is grief from losing my mother, or hormones, or both, or basically, could we just check my hormones? And his response to me was, are you unpleasant to be around? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. And he said, would the people closest to you, would your kids, for example, say you're unpleasant to be around? And I burst into tears because I was like, I certainly hope not. But his instant concern was for the people around me. And it was just really painful. And also the last time I saw him. And I did then go and get my hormones checked. And, it's just sort of like the beginning of trying to figure out what was happening. About 6 months ago, I went to a new female doctor, and she listened in that way that people listen when they have a meditation practice, which she turns out to have. And those of you who meditate, I don't mean to make you feel terrible if you don't meditate. I'm just letting you know, if you have a daily meditation practice, I really genuinely believe it changes the way that you listen. It's one of the reasons that I love the meditation practice so much. You're not sort of listening in that way where you are waiting for your turn to speak. You are really listening with your full attention. And she was listening to me in that way. And so much so, I think I hadn't had a doctor listen to me like that in so long that it made me emotional. And basically she was saying to me, I don't want you to continue to take the rizatriptan when you get clusters, because it can increase your chance of stroke. It's not a medication you should be taking all the time. I want to try you on a very low dose of Topamax, which is what I've been doing, and it has been working wonders for me. It's been life, game changing for me. And I'm sharing that with you in case you're somebody who struggles with migraines, I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you what worked for me. I've been taking it for about 6 months, and I have not had, the number of migraines I've had, period, has gone way down. The intensity has gone down, and I have not had a cluster until last week. I did have a cluster this past week, and I was writing about that. They're very unpleasant. What happens is you'll get one, and basically maybe that one will subside. You'll get another one like right on top of it, and then another one, and then, and it's just, you'll have days where they start to subside, and then they comes back again. And so I am allowed to take the rizatriptan on top of the Topamax if I need to. And I had done that 2 days in a row. Nothing, no good. So, and I also had this day where I felt really dark, and that's not like me. I am, no matter what is happening in my life or in the world, I am not a person who generally gets dark. Like, I might feel, of course, a lot of grief, or I might feel anxious, or I might feel any of the wide spectrum of emotions we're going to feel as human beings. But I don't generally get to a place where I feel like devoid of hope, or I just want to say, in case you're hearing background noise, Rufus is here, my rescue. So there's possibly some background crazy banging and panting. And anyway, we're still doing that dance right now because he's not happy unless he can see me. So, of course I have the full range, rage, outrage, all of it, but I don't generally get to a place where I just feel hopeless. And when I do, it has always generally been around my cycle. Once again, right? Like that is when it would happen in my life. And it would usually happen like the day before. This is growing up. This is forever. This is my whole life. Well, that happened this week with the cluster. So I'm like, this is hormonal. Whatever else is going on, it's not to say we have, the president of the United States walking around on the roof of the White House making deals with child raping sex traffickers. So there's definitely plenty of things to be wildly upset about. Voting Rights Act in jeopardy and all kinds of really devastating, genuinely just heartbreaking things happening, no doubt. But I don't generally go dark like this unless there are some hormones in the mix as well. So that's what I was writing about, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. And so eventually what happened, I was like, okay, I'm on day 2. What happens like day 2 is, 2.5 days in, is you just start to like, no matter what tools you have, you just start to lose it. It's debilitating. The pain, I know if you don't get these, it's hard to understand, but it's like a broken bone in your head. And there's just no relief. It just goes on and on and on. And so you start to lose it after a while. You're like an animal trapped in a, I would imagine it's something like that where you're ready to like chew your own limb. You just make it end. And in the past, I was writing about like when my kids were really little. This started when I was a teenager, the migraines. My dad got them, my grandfather got them. So there's definitely like a hereditary piece of this as well. My aunt used to get them, but I've been through such a long journey. I did all the things. They would have you, back in the day when this started, I had a doctor in New York City and he had me doing like food diaries and cycle diet. He had me doing all those things. And at a certain point after I had done all of that, he was like, my mom would come in with me sometimes. And my mother was a really interesting person because she was not one for, she wasn't demonstrative. She was not a person who was really affectionate. She didn't like keep on the verbal praise, but if I was sick, she was kind to me. It was really interesting. And if somebody else attacked me, she would get in the line of fire. Like she could attack me, but you could not attack me. And there were times like she would go into the office with me and I would be like, I would lose my peripheral vision. I would be nauseated. I'd be crawling around on the floor, just desperate. And she would be saying to me, you have to do something. And at a certain point, he said to me, this was months after, diet diaries and all that stuff. He's like, it's your mom. Which, I was like 17 at the time. He's like, there's like a real, she's a very intense person. And I was, you think? And she's a very intense, interesting person, my mother, and an alcoholic and not willing to look at that. And, it's just, there was a lot there. That was certainly part of the stress. And I also read once that migraines come from too many thoughts in your head. And I remember when I read that I laughed because I was like, well, if that's what it is, that is very likely because my head is, it's like a lot of stuff going on in there. Which is one of the reasons I think I was so drawn to the yoga practice because it just, I finally had tools to quiet all of that racket. And I think also as I was growing up, I started dancing when I was 4. I started taking ballet very seriously. Maybe not when I was 4, but as I got older, I was very serious about it. And I think part of the reason I was drawn to that kind of physical practice is because it pulls you out of your head. You know, when you're dancing on your toes and you are learning combinations and you are, you know, you're just practicing in that intense way, you really can't be thinking about what's happening in your life. You have to be in your body in the moment, and it's a relief. Now with ballet, there were all these other things in the world that I grew up in. It might not always be this way, but certainly in New York City and in the studio that I was that I was part of and where I was taking classes, and it was there were a lot of women, just a lot of people not eating. There's a lot of I think there were a lot of things that were feeding the type A perfectionist stuff that was already getting in my way in my life. So it wasn't necessarily the healthiest outlet in some ways, but in other ways it was really helpful. I did end up beating myself up a lot, and I was on point. And you know, there's a thing that happens when you are dancing on your toes. You start to override your body's pain sensations. You're teaching yourself that when your body says like, ow, you're like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna pay attention to that, we're doing it. And so I had to unlearn that. And I definitely had like, you know, body dysmorphia and like disordered eating and all kinds of things that I had to really unravel and unlearn and heal. So there were some great things that came out of ballet for me, 12 years of ballet, and some things that I really had to like work on. But yoga for me, I think, was such a relief, and seated meditation practice such a relief, because it does quiet that noise. And so as this week, you know, and every time I get one, since I've had a meditation practice, I will try to meditate through it. Like, okay, you know, there's an intense sensation I can be working with for sure. And, you know, just this idea of like, instead of identifying with the pain, right? Like, this is awful, this hurts, like, I can't take this, this is, you know, instead of going there, just being like, okay, let me examine, let me be curious about like, where exactly am I feeling this? Like, where is it in my head? And what is the quality of the sensation? Like, is it a stabbing pain? Is it, you know, is it a generalized pain in one area? Is there throbbing? Is there tingling? Like, you know, just to get really curious about sensation. You can only do that for so long. You know, am I nauseated? Like, there's only so many, you know, there's only so many hours you can go before you're like, okay, I have been doing this for 2.5 days. I need to be done now, you know? So that, and what would happen for me over the last several, I don't even know, you know, couple of decades, let's say, is the rizatriptan, if that wasn't working, which was rare, it was very rare. Once they started coming up with the triptans, I couldn't do the sumatriptan. I had a very serious allergic reaction to that after a while. But when they came up with like the Maxalt, for example, that family of triptans, that really worked for me. Rizatriptan is the one that was like, that's the one that seems to be the best for me. That kind of got it managed for me, so that if I felt one coming, I would take a rizatriptan, and within 15 minutes I would be okay. Now, it affects the blood flow to your brain, and there's, you know, there's like some conversation about how it increases the risk of stroke. It is not a medication you want to be taking a lot. And so it's like, you know, you reach for it if you're desperate, not like, it's hard. It's like, well, if I don't take it when I feel it at the onset, it's not going to work. And it can increase my risk of stroke. So like, you know, you're playing this game, but they're so debilitating, and they will take 3 days of your week away, or 4 days, you know, so it's, anyway, that's how it's been. But for the most part, I have been getting them so infrequently and just with my cycle that is what I have been doing for decades now. It's like, if I feel one coming, I take the rizatriptan, and usually that's it. When it isn't, that's when things get, you know, a little bit interesting. And if it really gets bad, which is very infrequent but does happen, that's when it's like, okay, and I have kids, now my kids are like teenagers. They're okay. They don't need me to, if I'm like not okay, they're okay. But when my kids were like 3 and 5, for example, doing the single mom thing, they need me to be okay. And I was writing about this one experience where it was just blinding. Nothing was working, and I was like, okay, I gotta go to the hospital. I have to get a shot. I have to get morphine. That's what you would do. Me. That's what I would do if it just got to the point where I'm like, nothing is working. I can't go on anymore, and that's what I'm gonna do. And because I am white, I can go into the ER and say I have a history of migraines. I am suffering. They'll give me morphine. That's not the case for everybody. And you need to understand that, like, as we have this conversation, not everyone's treated the same when they go into an ER, I'm just at the point now where, like, I feel it is so essential for us to be understanding every single way people are treated differently across the board. So that's what I was planning on doing. And I had called the sitter. My kids were asleep. I said, can you please come over? I got to go to the ER. She comes over. I'm walking out the door, and my friend Derek called. And he's like, hey, I'm going to the ER. I'm getting morphine. I can't. And he's like, don't do that. I'll be there. Just do not go. Don't wait for me. Pulls up in front of the house. I get in the car, and he's like, take a hit off of this. You'll be okay. And I did. I took a hit, I don't know, maybe pot, right? I took a hit off of a joint. And I am not someone, this is no whatever, this is just maybe because I grew up with an alcoholic mom, and I don't drink, I don't smoke, I'm not somebody who does a lot of that. I never have. And I do think it's because I grew up watching my mom be out of control in that way, and it scared me, and it was uncomfortable, and I watched it really affect our relationship in terrible ways. And so, and I think also because of all of that chaos and uncertainty, I never wanted to be the cause of chaos and uncertainty. And I also had to work against, one of the things for me is I've had to realize, like, I like to know what's happening. I like to know what's coming next. I like to keep things nice for everyone around me. I can be controlling in that way of trying to manage everything for everybody with the best intentions. It's still controlling. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your intentions are. So I've had to really work on that too. And I think part of that desire to make everything nice for everyone, whatever, also not wanting to be out of control myself, has just made it like, I don't want to take something that's going to make me not in control of what I'm going to say or do. So I've just never been somebody who, even when I was a kid, the first time I tried pot, I was 14, 8th grade. And I ended up in the corner of my friend's bedroom, like under a blanket crying, like trying not to make any noise. It depressed me. I did not really get why anyone liked it. And then after that, months later, we went to the planetarium, the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. They used to have Friday nights, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. They would play the album, and they would have this incredible show that they would project on the dome there in the planetarium. It was unbelievable. And so we went, and of course the same person that I had tried, there was like a group of artsy, like my friends, we would hang out, and so everybody would take a hit. And I tried it again for the second time then, and that time it did not depress me, and I was like, oh, okay, I understand why people like this. And so when we would go to that show, that is when I would say, okay, which we would do not that often. And that was kind of it for me. I would drink very infrequent. I just was not, by the time I got to college, I was not even remotely interested. I had already like tried and was like, no, I'm not, it's not for me. I don't want to be out of control. I don't want to, it's just not for me. And that's kind of how I've been, period. And I think, I have my kids and I'm just like, certainly not going to be doing anything because they need me, So anyway, Derek, so I take a hit and I am like, I did not even know what planet I was on. Like, I got out of that car, I went into the house and I said to the sitter, can you stay? Because like, I don't even know where I am. And she was like, I will stay. Go to sleep, I will stay. And so I went to sleep and I woke up, I don't know, like 3 hours later and I was okay. It was like, but I was saying in the essay, it's like, it's not even that it like fixed them. It's like, I didn't even know I had a head anymore. Like that is how gone I was. And so, I think because I don't do this stuff very often, when I do, it like really hits me. And so that's what I did the other night. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do that. Like, I can't take this anymore. I'm at that point where it's either like morphine, which I don't want, because that'll knock you out. That'll knock you on your ass for like a good day. Or, I'm going to take a hit. So I came out to the backyard and I have this crazy puppy who's awesome. And so he's like running zoomies and I had a giant coughing fit. It was so embarrassing. Really like a kid who's like never taken a hit before. And, but it did it. Same thing. It just knocked me out and I woke up the next day and it was gone. So, I'm not recommending that. This is not me telling you, I'm just sharing what happened. And, I was also writing about, I think like a year and a half ago, I went to Austin for the weekend for no reason, just because I wanted to, just for fun. And I haven't done any, like that was the first time I had done something just for fun in like 20 years, like just because I felt like it. I wasn't going to work. I just went to see a friend for the weekend and have some fun and like listen to live music and go and have a good time. And I almost, when I made the plan to go and see her, I almost booked a yoga workshop. I was like, well, if I'm going to Austin, I could, I knew there were like some studios and I was like, don't do that. Just go and have some fun. Like, don't make it work. Like, just go and have fun. And I did. I had a blast. I had such a good time. And it made me realize I don't do enough of that. Like, I haven't been doing enough of that in my life for a really long time. And that weekend, I did a lot of things just for fun. Like I had beer, like I went out and listened to live music and I had a couple of beers. I'm never going to be somebody who does things to excess. Like I don't have to worry about that because it's just not in my, it's just not a thing for me that I have to worry about. Whatever sort of like obsessive, it's not that I don't have that in my personality because I do, but not with substance. I have it with like other things like cleaning or like I get into that mode that sort of like, I think I do honestly have like a little touch of OCD, but it doesn't, I don't have to worry about addiction and substance for me. So I can go and have a couple of beers and let that be the end of it, It's not something I do. The last time I did it was a year and a half ago in Austin. So it's not something I'm going to do a lot. It's just that weekend I was like, I don't think I've done this in 20 years. I don't think I've done this since before I had my kids. Just like gone and just done things for the fun of it. That's not good. It was kind of like reminding myself of the person I was before I had kids and that she still exists in here somewhere. And that I think is important for all of us, is to kind of not lose sight of the people we were before the people we are, the people we became, the people we've become. Like, just to kind of remember the kid that you were and check in with that person every once in a while, because they're like still in there somewhere. So that time, that whole weekend, I just said yes to like whatever. I was just like, I'm just going to say yes all weekend. I mean, within reason, obviously. And then when I was getting on the plane, I realized she had given me a gummy, like a THC gummy at some point over the weekend that I hadn't taken, and I didn't want to take it on the plane. And she was like, well, just take it now. Like, just take it. I was like, all right. So I took it. It was like 5 milligrams. Such a mistake. I mean, such a mistake. I took it, and like I got to the gate, and I was like, oh, I'm fine. I don't even feel it. This is fine. And then all of a sudden I realized I was grinning like an idiot, like just grinning at the gate. And I'm like, oh God, I'm like, okay, it's hitting me. And so I was trying to like not grin. And when you try to not grin, it's going to make it worse. I like texted her. I'm like, oh God, it's like hitting me. But she had taken it, so she was no help. So we were just like laughing. I had to get on a plane. It was like, I highly do not recommend that ever, unless you're like a professional. I am so not a professional. It was not a good plan. No gummies before you get on a plane with strangers. If you don't do that all the time, I would definitely not recommend that. Like 0 stars. But anyway, so I was just writing about that this week. And The Dark Side of the Moon is such an interesting album. If you don't know what it's about, you can look that up, because there's a lot of it that's about like mental illness and capitalism and railing against capitalism, and it's a really interesting, the lore around that whole album is fascinating. And I was writing about a lot of that stuff too. And I think, listen, anybody who's still listening to me or reading or whatever is probably on the same page, and anyone who isn't has long ago left. And I think for me at this point, I was writing a lot about the Voting Rights Act because I'm devastated. I don't know how much people are paying attention to that. There's so much coming at us all the time. Like I said, the guys walking around on the roof of the White House, it's like, it doesn't end. I saw a clip of him talking about what, gold leaf, like, should we gold leaf that? It's like, dude, really? This is what's on your mind? Ballrooms and gold leafing, and, you just gutted Medicaid. I got a notice from the Affordable Care Act a couple weeks ago, basically letting me know that as of December 31st, the Obamacare Affordable Care Act subsidies are ending. The subsidies I get are about $1,350 a month. And then the Biden era tax extensions were like $350. So basically it's like $1,700 in subsidies are going away. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to afford health insurance as of January. And this man's worrying about ballrooms and gold leaf. Like, that's what's on his mind. And making deals with, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's one of the most despicable creatures we've ever had. I mean, it's like, you get to a point where you're like, I can't really have a rational conversation with someone who's unwilling to, look at that. I'm sorry, but like, if you're not gonna look at these things that are actually happening here and acknowledge, like, that's not okay. And this woman is now in a minimum security prison camp in Texas 2 days after talking to Todd Blanche, and that is clearly like the most corrupt, disgusting. They're not even supposed to have sex offenders in a prison camp like that, and they've made an exception for her. Why? When you could just redact the names of the victims who have not willingly come forward that are in the files and release them. You could do that, and that's what the victims would like. That's what you could do. But instead of doing that, you're going and talking to a woman and all of this like conversation about, well, she told Todd Blanche she never saw the president do anything concerning around her. Okay, she was not, what, concerning? This woman's concept of what is concerning. This is a person who procured minor girls for her ex-boyfriend so that they could like traffic and, you know, I don't want to like RAPE them together. That's her, that didn't concern her. So her definition of like what is concerning is like, it's meaningless to me. Like perjuring herself doesn't concern her. So, you know, I'm not, that like, I just can't anymore. You know, I can't anymore. I'm out of words for how wrong all of this is. And the Voting Rights Act is that is an act that it was, I took constitutional law in high school and college. I took advanced placement constitutional law in high school, and then I took it again in college. I was really fascinated. There was a moment in time where I thought I might want to be a lawyer. And I loved doing briefs. See, that's like where my sort of type A, like OCD stuff, I liked doing that kind of thing. And I remember very clearly learning about the Voting Rights Act, 1965, and it was taught as the crown jewel of the civil rights movement. That's the way it was. The legislative crown jewel of the civil rights movement was the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And what it was intended to do, Black men got the right to vote in 1870. That's the 15th Amendment of the Constitution, 1870. Instantly, when that happened, Southern states started messing around. They were like, okay, well, we're gonna make it really hard then. We're gonna insist on literacy tests for Black men in order to vote. We're gonna gerrymander. We're gonna make it really hard. You can't vote here. You're gonna have to, you know, find a way to get 20 miles away today if you wanna cast your vote. Intimidation practices, which, you know, Southern states in the 1870s, I think we could probably imagine what that looked like. Grandfathering in these clauses. It was just, they poll taxes. They made it really hard. So yeah, you have the right to vote, but we're not going to make it easy. So in 65 with the Voting Rights Act, that's what it was intended to do. It was intended to basically break the hold of the Jim Crow policies of the South that had permeated. You know, there were all these structures across our country that were upholding these Jim Crow policies. And, you know, I wonder sometimes, I'm like, do they know American history? Do they know like the 3/5? Like, do they know about Jim Crow? Do they understand what was going on? You know, that like when the founding fathers said all men are created equal, like they only meant all white men, you know? That's really the only people that were protected in the Constitution by the founding fathers were white men. Not Black men, not women, not like, you know, I don't know if people understand this. I hope that they do. And one of the things I was saying this week is like, if you're not somebody who, and I don't want to like shame anyone, if somehow like that, you just don't have a solid grasp on American history and you're not going to go and read a book, like there are great films. You could go look at 13th. You could look at Selma. Like there are movies you could watch that would fill you in. You know, is it the same as like, no, but you know what? It's like, as long as you understand what happened, it would be better than not understanding. Bryan Stevenson is another incredible person that you could go and research. That's Bryan Stevenson, and he's got the Equal Justice Initiative, and you can read his story. And I mean, there's just so much out there, you know, to make this pretty easy to understand and to grasp. So, and they're beautiful films. They're painful, but they're beautiful films, you know? Okay. Anyway, so the Voting Rights Act, John Lewis, right? Make good trouble. Like, okay. So that is what that Voting Rights Act was there to do. It was basically enacted to break the hold of these old Jim Crow policies, these racist policies, these policies that were making it hard for Black people to get to vote, to, you know, there's this whole like no taxation without representation, right? That's like one of the main principles of our democracy. And so that was the idea. Okay, everyone is supposedly now free and equal, and so then if you're going to pay tax like everyone else, and you're going to be working, and you also should be represented equally like everyone else. And when people start messing around with that, like, that's not okay. And this Voting Rights Act was intended to protect Black people and give them a way to sue if their voting rights were being violated. And that is what this act has been used for all these years. And it has been eroded since 2013 with, I think it was Holder County. I'm forgetting the name. It was a case in 2013 where basically the Supreme Court invalidated the formula. So there was a formula that basically said, if you as a state or a local government have ever engaged in discriminatory practices, racially discriminatory practices around voting in the past, and you want to change any rules or regulations about voting in any upcoming elections, you have to get permission, written permission from the U.S. Justice Department. You can't just decide for yourself you're going to change some rules. We need to approve those rules. That's part of what the Voting Rights Act did. Like any act, it's got many different pieces. There's like Section 2, there's all these different, right? So people, when they go to sue, they can sue under different sections of an act. So that pre-clearance was a big part of it. It was like, okay, if you are, Louisiana, for example, which is what I'm going to tell you in a second, and you have a history of discriminatory voting practices, which they do, you can't change anything. You can't redraw a map, a district map. You can't change any voting rules or regulations unless you ask the U.S. Department of Justice. Okay. What happened in 2013 with that case it was like Holder County. Oh, it'll come to me. Anyway, the Supreme Court changed the formula for like who fell under that sort of jurisdiction, like what qualified as discriminatory practices. So, what states, what local governments, like what rose to the level of engaging in those discriminatory practices that would then make a place have to ask permission to change rules. They changed the formula and made it a lot less potent so that states that had engaged in some crappy practices in the past now did not need to ask permission anymore. They could change their rules, and there wasn't that oversight to the degree that there had been. So they started to erode the power of the Voting Rights Act back in 2013. It was alarming then. What has happened now recently and what is about to go in front of the Supreme Court is in Louisiana. Louisiana has, and I'm trying to make this really simple, like just really, bring it down to bare bones here for people so it's very easy to understand. Louisiana's population is 1/3 Black. Okay, Black residents make up 1/3 of the population of Louisiana. They have 6 congressional districts total. 6 congressional districts. So if Black residents make up 1/3 of Louisiana and there are 6 congressional districts, when you draw up the map, 2 out of 6 would be 1/3, right? 2 out of 6 of those congressional districts would be Black. When they drew up the maps, the congressional district maps, they only made one of those maps majority Black. It should have been 2. So what happened is 12 people sued. They went under the Voting Rights Act and they said, hey, Black residents make up 1/3 of all the population in Louisiana, and we've got 6 congressional districts, so we should get 2 of the districts should be majority Black, not 1, 2. We're not being represented properly. The lower court said, you're absolutely right. The Louisiana legislature has violated your rights to fair representation, and they need to redraw this map with 2 majority Black congressional districts. That's where it should have ended, but it did not, because a bunch of not Black people then went to the Supreme Court and said, the fact that Louisiana is considering race when it is adding another majority Black congressional district to the map violates our 14th Amendment right. To what? To make sure our Black neighbors are not equally represented the way they should be. I hope I'm getting this across for what it is. They are basically, here is a law that was created in order to make sure racial discrimination against Black people would stop when it came to their voting rights. And these, I'm trying hard not to spew every expletive I can think of right now. They're using that to say, we as white people, our rights are being violated because you are considering the race of Black people when you redraw this map, when you add the 2nd district. That violates my rights under this act. It's disgusting. And there was a time when the Supreme Court of the United States would not have heard this case. They just would have said, no, we're not going to listen to this case. But that time is not now, unfortunately. They are going to listen to this case. And if they decide that that's true, if they decide that yes, you poor white people, your rights have been violated, then it's over. Then the Voting Rights Act is nothing but words at this point. They've taken all the power away from it again. And these places can draw their maps any way they want. And I think what's happening, is that I'm watching all this stuff go down, right? And obviously, I hope that's not what happens. I keep hoping that enough people are going to sort of like understand what's going on and say, no, I'm not going to let that happen. I don't want that. That's not a vision that I want for this country. Or But, I keep watching that not happen, and it's heartbreaking and it's enraging, and it's so sad. Honestly, it's so sad. It's like, what are you doing right now? What are you doing and what are you thinking? It's, yeah. There is I don't know which, I think it was CNN today. There was an interview. This woman was interviewing this pastor, and I just caught it. Like I didn't get to sit and really take it in, but he was basically saying that men run the house, and women don't need to be voting. Women don't need to be voting. There can just be a household vote that the man makes, and women stay home with the kids. That's what women are entrusted with. The souls of the children that they're bringing into this world, and they're the CEO of the household, and men are the leaders of the household, and they're going to cast the vote for the household, and they're going to make the decisions for the household. But the woman gets to be the CEO of the household. She gets to do that. But it doesn't take any particular talent to biologically reproduce and have babies. Okay. You know what, sir? I have a project for you for the weekend, and it involves like lube and a watermelon. You're not going to like it, but I don't want to hear about how it doesn't take any talent to biologically push children into this world, grow people inside your body, because it does actually. It takes talent, and it takes talent to raise children, good human beings, and it takes talent to not sleep for 10 years. It takes a lot of things that you have no idea what you're talking about, and work at the same time, and be a decent person at the same time. But this is who these people are. And the thing that really scared me is that in the comments, people were up in arms. Why are you platforming these people? These people are disgusting. And it's like, if you think these are radical outliers, you have missed a lot of information. This is Project 2025. What they said at the end of this conversation is the pastor, this is like he's buddies with Pete Hegseth. This is what the Heritage Foundation wants. They want to erode voting rights. I read it. I'm not telling you something. I'm not guessing. I didn't skim it. I read it. 920 pages on my way to and from Portugal. I read it. They want to erode voting rights. So they're working on it actively in the case I was just describing to you. And that's all marginalized groups. That's not just Black people. That's going to be any marginalized groups there. Women, the SAVE Act. What do you think the SAVE Act is? This whole idea that suddenly, women, if you've changed your name and you've taken your husband's last name, you're going to need your birth certificate, or a passport in order to prove that you are you. Like, what is that? That's a poll tax, because passports cost money. A passport, if you want to go get your US passport, that's like $200, $250 minimum. And that's if they don't slow down the process on you. I bet you if people started right now trying to get their passports, they might not have it in time for the midterms. It's because they've gutted all these federal agencies, thanks Doge. It's disgusting what's happening. And people are not understanding what's going on. They are trying to erode voting rights for women and all marginalized members of our society. The only people being protected are white, straight men, particularly Christian men, particularly upwardly mobile, white, straight Christian men. This is a Christo-fascist bunch of people going on there. You have Mike Johnson, you have Pete Hegseth, you have J.D. Vance, you have Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, Elon Musk, all these people. They are either Christo-fascist or they're tech bros They're like billionaire tech bros, and they do not care about Americans or democracy or anything else. They don't. They want white, patriarchal, that's what they want. And women at home popping out babies. And I got to tell you, if you are not getting the memo, it's really time. You know, a lot of people, look, I think the people that are following him are gone. They're not coming back, but not anytime soon. It doesn't seem to matter. You know, when you start making deals with people like Ghislaine Maxwell and no one's saying anything. His people are quiet. You know, they're not saying anything. They're gone. Like if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to go with him down that disgusting path, you're gone. But there are so many people that I encounter in my life who are like, I'm just really not into politics. I'm just really not into. Let me just tell you something, okay? And I say this with all the love. I mean it. Politics is into you. Whether you're into politics or not, politics is into you. Big time. So if you are not paying attention because you're not into it, I'm just letting you know, like, your rights, by the time you turn around and realize what's going on, you're not going to have rights anymore. If you're a woman in particular, if you are any member of any marginalized community and you are not paying attention because you're not into politics, politics is into you. And not paying attention is not going to be a choice you are glad you made in a very short amount of time. When your vote is, you can't vote. Your rights are gone. Your power is gone. If you think it's a crazy idea that you would not be able to open a bank account in your own name or take out a credit card in your own name, that happened in my lifetime, that women could do that here in this country. It was 1974 that women were able to take out a credit card on their own and open a bank account on their own. I was born in 71, so I was 3 years old when that happened. That is not that long ago, friends. It's not that long ago. If you think they don't want to roll things back, you're not paying attention. That is exactly what they want. They want a world where you have to ask your husband or your dad or your brother to go to the bank with you and co-sign. And you have no power anymore. And if you want any measure of safety in this world, you're going to get married and pop out some babies. And they want to make it look pretty for you on Instagram with the pastel whatever and the 6 kids lined up in the background. And, you know, oh, look how fun it is to churn butter and make bread from scratch. And I'll tell you what, maybe it's fun on a random Saturday because you feel like seeing if you can do it. But when that's your life and that's it, and you don't have any options, and you are stuck at home with 6 kids, and you know, you don't have your own money and you don't have your own power, and your husband can come and go as he pleases, and he's running the purse strings and making the decisions and casting the votes, your life's over. Your life is over. And when he decides he's done with you and he's on to the next, and he takes your kids with him and decides you're crazy and he's going to have you committed, you think these things can't happen? You have not read a history book. I don't know what to tell you, but it's time. It's overdue. It's time to wake up. Please, begging you, especially if you're just someone who's like, I'm not into politics. You got to get into politics now. It's time. It's past time. You got to get out of the cold plunge and wake up now. It's, you know, really. So anyway, that's where I'm at. You know where to find me if you need me. But yeah. All right. Sending you a lot of love until next time. And I don't know. See you on the dark side of the moon, I guess, right?